Yeah.
Okay, it's all going. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muneeb Shah. I head Trade, Supply, and Energy Industry Business Units at R3. And today I'll be talking a bit about Corda and a bit about R3, as well as a lot about what Corda and R3 can help you with in the mining and metals landscape. So to start with, let's outline the agenda. We'll give a brief introduction about who we are. I'll talk a bit about how decentralization and blockchain is broadly helping in digitizing the mining industry. We'll talk a bit about some of the use cases, that can be implemented on blockchain in the mining industry, and we will also be talking about a couple of case studies relevant in this space. Uh, so we started our journey in terms of becoming the world's largest enterprise software company for blockchain today in 2014. We initially started as a consortia of 8 to 9 banks who came together to understand where distributed ledger technologies can be leveraged. By 2015, this consortia grew to 42 member banks, and by 2016 November, we had Corda open source available generally for use. By 2018, our ecosystem grew to around 200 plus financial institutions. And in July 2018, before that, we launched Corda Enterprise version. And today, by 2021, we are an ecosystem of roughly around 350 plus institutions exploring blockchain, and implementing blockchain in enterprise readiness across its all forms. So the core industries that we focus on and where there is massive, mind share with respect to blockchain implementation are in banking and financial services, as you would have imagined. But we are also seeing increased traction in energy, in mining, in broadly in the trade finance space, in insurance, in capital markets, in healthcare. We've implemented hundreds of applications on Corda in each of these industry segments to bring to life decentralization, to bring to life the value adds and benefits of leveraging Corda and broadly DLT. Now, let me explain a little bit in terms of what Corda is. So Corda is a third generation blockchain. It's open and it's interoperable, but at the same time, it guarantees a lot of privacy. If you think about blockchain generally, we know there are two broad types of blockchains: public blockchains and private blockchains. And public blockchains are traditionally generation one blockchains like the Bitcoins and Ethereums of the world, wherein they're open for everyone to join. They're very inefficient from a network perspective. They consume a lot of compute capability, for a business process to manifest on it. And then we move to the next level, which is generation two. You would have heard about IBM Hyperledger. You would have heard about Quorum. These are siloed private blockchains. There could be multiple siloed networks coming together, and they lead to a sort of stranded asset scenario in a lot of ways. And coming to us at R3 Corda, we are a generation 3 blockchain, and it is the next generation blockchain as we talk about it. It's a combination of public and private blockchain use cases, guaranteeing a high degree of transaction privacy and as well as identity. It is private, but at the same time, it's interoperable with other business networks and allows transfer of assets. The beauty of leveraging Corda is that it enables delivery versus payment as well, right? Which is one of the key use cases that you would see manifest as I speak further in the discussion today. For payment to be made to a particular seller only when you have received the goods. So that delivery versus payment kind of a scenario manifests in multiple other use cases and would be very relevant to the mining scenario as well. Why to use blockchain, right? So the Corda network by itself started with a vision that is, what I see is what you see. Let's look at a very typical scenario, right? If you look at how business transactions are done now between a very typical or a classical supplier and a customer, the supplier does the work, records the work, applies their own credit, generates an invoice, posts this invoice, and sends it to the customer. And the invoice is usually sent either electronically in certain cases, in most cases, still paper-based, manual, fax-based, email-based, or in post. The customer receives this invoice, gets it across to their accounts payable department. They do the confirm of the credit. They acknowledge maybe the customer has done the work or not done the work, or the supplier has done the work or not done the work, and then they decide how much to pay basis the invoice that they have received. Now, the problem here is that this record of work that's done by the supplier and the acknowledgement of work that happens at the customer's end happens in their own silos. Both do it at their own ends, and there is no consensus reached in between, which often leads to disputes. Now, let's look at a scenario as to how blockchain remediates that business process. So what it does, it creates a shared truth or a ledger between the supplier and the customer across multiple steps in this business process, which means when a supplier records the work, it immediately real-time available becomes available to the customer. The customer can have a look at it and come back and say, yes, I accept it, or no, I reject it, without going further down in the business process. So the aim here is that you have a shared system wherein you are sharing your data points and you're both agreeing on those data points before the next step executes, thus saving you time, effort, money, and bringing in operational efficiency. So it's creating that shared business logic, shared data, shared network between two entities that leads to both the supplier and the customer seeing the same thing at the same time. Now, how does Corda work, right? So from an enterprise blockchain platform perspective, the key factors that we need to take into consideration is privacy, security, interoperability, and scalability, right? The platform works on four broad pillars. One, the first and foremost, is confidentiality. Corda by itself is a private permission blockchain. It is a peer-to-peer messaging system wherein two stakeholders or two nodes, as we call them, interact with each other on a peer-to-peer basis, thus making sure that the information that's getting shared between two parties remains between two parties rather than being broadcasted widely. The second is, from a technology perspective, Corda is based on an existing technology. It uses a Java virtual machine, and it uses oracles that enable that deterministic third-party data on ledger. Okay? So while, from a underlying network perspective, yes, it can be complex, but from an implementation perspective and user-friendliness perspective, Corda has some accelerators and underlying artifacts from an architectural perspective that exemplify or simplify its usage in a lot of ways. Consensus on Corda is built from two parts. One is validation, which is done by the counterparties on the network. And second is uniqueness, which is done by a distributed notary pool or a custodian, or you might also call them some sort of an oracle. Compliance, the contracts that are executed on Corda are backed by a legal prose. There are observer nodes onto the network which enable regulation, which enable compliance. And there is an identity service which is used to add identities onto the network safely, thus making sure that you onboard only your proven stakeholders onto the network who are required to be on the network, unlike a public blockchain, which anybody can join. So that gives you a brief overview about how Corda works on a high level. Let's move on to the next slide now, which talks about uh, the need of digitization in the mining and metals industry broadly. Now, if we look at uh, the core use cases or the core key trends which are applicable in the mining and metals industry today, they're about financing, they're about productivity, they're about ESG, which is about sustainability, governance, etc. Obviously, technology, and to a larger degree about resiliency. There was a recent study done by KPMG Global Mining Survey on 2020, in 2020 last year, which said that around 60% of the organizations who participated in this survey said access to traditional source of financing has deteriorated. 66% said commodity price risks, credit risks, and currency risks impact the industry the most. In another survey by PwC, the EBITDA forecast to reduce by close to around 6% as a result of commodity prices. Similarly, from a digital trends perspective, 75% of participants in another report and survey said that if mining companies do not embrace digital, they lose their competitive position and may even face extinction. 36% said innovation and technological transformation was a top strategy for growth. 12% of mining and metal company CEOs are extremely concerned about cyber attacks. 39.5% of them said that of innovation in mining and metal industry is a result of cost pressure, right? And they are doing that innovation to reduce the costs. And more recently, the pandemic that we have been in has had its effect on the industry as well. So there has been 42% planned production decrease. There is 44% uh, experienced supply chain and demand disruptions. 16% increase in operational costs, 49% decrease in capital budget, and 38% reported that workforce planning as the first priority, followed by health and safety and supply chain. So a lot is going on from a trends perspective. And as it's evident in these surveys, digital is coming about to be one of the main trends. And when we look at blockchain and when we talk about Corda, we're not just talking about any other underlying technology that basically tells you throw away what you have, bring Corda in, and it's a magic bullet. That's not the case. What we are now talking about is leveraging blockchain as a key underpinning lever to enable you to get onto the roadmap of digital transformation. We look at the business process first, and basis the business process, identify whether DLT blockchain fits it or not. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So the essence here is to make sure that you are on a sustainable path from a digital transformation perspective, giving you efficiency and giving you efficiency both from a cost perspective as well as from an operational standpoint. Now let's look at the mining value chain broadly, right? So if we talk about the mining value chain from planning to mining to manufacturing to transportation and marketing and sales, each of them have a list of activities underlying them. For example, from a planning perspective, you have to acquire permits, you have to do design, you have to do financing. From a mining standpoint, you have to do excavation, you have to do scrap metal disposals, you have to load and haul. When you talk about manufacturing, getting these metals and processing them, casting, welding, and the overall processing process is one of the key activities. When it comes to transportation, it's all about moving these metals or finished goods from one end to another, warehousing and shipping. And then comes marketing and sales. How do you enable trading? How do you sell a finished product into the market? How do you get an end customer and user to adopt your product? Now, all of these within their own remit have certain implications from a data perspective. They have certain challenges, and there are certain areas where blockchain can come to the rescue. If you look at planning as such, it takes into account data from a geographical perspective, from a financial perspective, and from a community standpoint. Similarly, in the mining space, it's about the well bore pressure data, the quantity and quality data, the provenance data, and whatnot. When it comes to manufacturing, we're talking about metal ore grade quality, for example, or capacity data, or financial production data. Or in the transportation space, it's about the shipping documents, the logistics documents, the trade documents, the inventory data, and all of the data associated with that. And when you come to the marketing side, it's about forecasting, it's about customer location, it's about ESG data. And when you look at challenges, there are challenges across each one of them. For example, in planning, acquiring and maintaining a permit is a challenge. Access to capital and liquidity is a challenge. Rising costs is a challenge. When it comes to mining, the volatilities, and maintaining the volatilities, for example, with respect to weather is a core challenge. Equipment and safety is a core challenge. Productivity is a challenge. And more importantly, the waste and water management is a core challenge. Similarly, in the manufacturing space, modern mining workforces, cybersecurity, and transportation, about trade insurance, credit terms, the resiliency of supply chains, which are getting redefined today because of the scenario we are in. And broadly, from a marketing perspective, creation of new marketplaces, price volatilities. So all of these challenges account to some inefficiencies in the system at one point or the other. And now let's look at where blockchain fits it, right? Now, from a blockchain perspective, if we look at the value chain broadly, in the planning stage, contract digitization, management, syndicated lending, etc., could be core use cases that can be implemented in the planning stage. In the mining stage, equipment and health data, communication between production sites and vendors, procurement could be a key use case. When we talk about manufacturing, detailing out the product attributes, that a particular product, where did it come from, what is it made of, how many components went into it, all of that, right? And building that specification around that product is what blockchain can help with. And when we talk about supply chain and transportation, traceability of these metals or minerals that have been mined, how are they shipped from one place to another and shipped in a way which is provenant, which can be proven back and tracked back, and which is not prone to breaches in the supply chain, is what blockchain brings to the table. From a customer's perspective, if, for example, as a customer, I'm buying a diamond today, what blockchain gives me is a capability of proving the authenticity and origin of this particular, item of jewelry or diamond or metal that I have bought. So that whole sale verification process and electronic uh, invoicing process can now be built on blockchain, and those are the use cases that we are exploring. Uh, Moving on to the next stage. So if we look at the key use cases broadly that are suited on Corda, there are four or five, broad use cases. One, wherever you're talking about data sharing across parties, you can think of leveraging blockchain. Wherever you're talking about price sensitive environments, privacy sensitive environments, wherein you have to maintain privacy, but at the same time participate in an open ecosystem from a market perspective, you can think about blockchain and Corda. Wherever you're talking about a combination of multilateral settlements, etc., happening in a very complex environment, for example in a trading scenario, blockchain can be looked at. Wherever you're talking about performance as a key issue in terms of meeting SLAs, for example, spot trading from a minerals perspective, blockchain can be looked at. And again, one of the most important things where you can think of implementing blockchain is in the regulations and the auditing and the the part which needs to be reported back either to regulators or auditors, and that is where blockchain comes handy as well. So these are the 4 or 5 broad categories where we think Corda is best suited to help, and organizations and app builders who are building new age applications focused on mining can radically benefit from. Let's now talk about some of the finer granular use cases and the broad categories applicable across these use cases. The first use case, or a theme, as I may call it, where, and this list again is non-exhaustive, is a digital mine and interconnectivity. For example, custody transfer, physical plus title, moving a particular product from the mine to the warehouse, transferring the custody of it, both physically as well as from a document perspective. Uh, Mining equipment health tracking, asset lifecycle management. All of these are new age use cases focused on that digitally transformed mining area enabled by blockchain. Supply chain, and within supply chain, contract digitization, provenance, or account migration, or any specific customer requests or challenges that can be addressed with respect to traceability, etc., or even fraud, are core use cases. When we talk about financing and combating fraud, and trade-based money laundering is today one of the core areas and that we are focused on because of the impact it has in the way we do business. Blockchain has been heavily utilized in the trading marketplaces and exchanges. We have been leveraging blockchain and Corda very specifically in trade finance. You can also look at leveraging blockchain and Corda in the intercompany and intracompany payments processes, in your invoice reconciliation processes. And the other thing that I spoke about earlier as well, environment, social governance, health and safety management and tracking, and more importantly, waste disposal is again a core use case that we can think about. Now, in the interest of time, let me, go through a couple of use cases that have been enabled by Corda, and we'll also talk about how they have manifested from an implementation standpoint. So let's look at custody transfer, right? Custody transfer basically refers to transactions involving transporting a physical substance possession from one party to another. And this process involves multiple standards, multiple contractual agreements, a lot of regulations, and taxation. The process also involves various tools such as precision measurement systems, quality systems, calibration devices, and a lot of automation. If you look at the current solution overview, there's party A, who has a physical substance, and then there is a mechanism of measuring that physical substance. And then there is a monitoring operator who basically validates that, yes, this measurement is correct. And when this asset or this party has to transfer this physical substance to party B, they have to transfer it physically. They as well has to go and do the title transfer. They also have to do document management associated with it. The challenges that we have is that there is loss or both for unaccounted transfers as well as where the commodity prices are undefined or low. There is a need of continuous maintenance and replacement of systems. The business drivers for change are improved accuracy of reporting, integrating different parties and solutions and contracts, enhancing online monitoring, uh, log calibration times, and link to transactions, and also same would apply for the spare parts and the maintenance schedule. So, what is the 2B, right? The 2B is wherein you have a solution architecture where these multiple ecosystem participants, which means the party A in this case and party B and the operator and the measurement system, are all connected onto one single ledger rather than having these point-to-point communications. The digital title documents that are currently getting transferred manually and physically also are now getting transferred on the ledger. So what we lead to is improvement in measuring and related systems, tamper-proof custody, and a historical trail of how the asset has moved from one party to another. Integrating these multiple parties together, automated checking and transactions related to standards, contractual agreements, relaxation and regulations and taxation broadly. And what Corda provides in this case is a high degree of ease of integration. You can have document management. You can have measurement systems. For example, if there's a measurement system required for a particular asset, that measurement system can be connected with an IoT device or might be IoT enabled by itself. And that IoT device or measurement system can be integrated onto a blockchain backend to send the information real time seamlessly without any manual intervention in between. What we also do in this case is for the broader process of the digital title documents, etc., enable integration with the backend ERP systems using very simple generic APIs. And on top of it would sit a workflow engine would make sure that the business process manifests smoothly from one end to another. So this is one of the core use cases. We have several other examples, and you might think about, for example, contract digitization. How do you now create a contract on the ledger itself rather than having these multiple paper-based iterative contracts going to and fro from one party to another, and nobody having a single source of truth? And if you look at the current solution overview, it is about, for example, there's a document storage and stack, and each party is independently contributing to that. But what we want to move to is a world of an interconnected ecosystem, wherein there's a trading platform, a commodity platform, a shipping company, a financing company, the warehousing guys, the processing guys, all on a single platform wherein contracts can be automated, created, digitized, and transferred very seamlessly. Another use case that we could think of is creating a commodity trading exchange by itself, right? So if you look at the trading process today, we have a lot of intermediaries in the trading process. The whole trading process is manual, wherein a trader of a company calls another guy and tells him, I want to buy certain metals or minerals from you. They exchange this information either on phone, email, fax, or paper-based. And then each one of them goes and punches this information into their respective enterprise trading and risk management systems. And then their workflow starts independently, which is more or less a black box. What we want to move is to a world wherein you have all these key stakeholders involved in a commodity trade all on a single platform, where your trade recap, your contracts, your SLAs, your services agreements are all captured on trade, to the point wherein your trade of a particular asset is also captured on ledger and fed back to your ERP systems. Once you agree on the trade on this network and everybody is happy, the next process kickstarts basis an automated workflow of what we call as smart contracts, which is a self-executable business rule, which starts the next process. Think about it this way: a buyer and a seller executing a trade on the ledger, confirm a trade, and the platform or the network automatically notifies a shipper telling them buyer A and seller B has agreed on a trade. Can you now please pick up these goods and ship them? So that kind of workflow automation is enabled by Ledger. And another important use case in this space is about asset lifecycle management. How do you track the health of your assets, which today most of the assets that we think of are connected devices in a lot of ways. So how do you basically enable these connected devices to be sharing information across to you on a blockchain backend, which is immutable, which is non-tamper proof, and basis that information that's available to you, you can now create more business logic to drive further processes down the line. So in the interest of time, I'll pause here from a use cases perspective, and please feel free to ask any questions towards the end of the session. But let me also now give you a view of some of the case studies that we have on Corda today. Uh, Rio Tinto, most of you might have heard of, a leader in mining and metal industry. They are, looking at adopting some sort of a Silicon Valley mindset. They recently executed a blockchain based trade with a Chinese counterpart via Contour, which is a blockchain-based letter of credit platform. And this Contour platform is built on R3's Corda. So what they have done in this space, they've digitized the entire trading process in terms of issuing a letter of credit, digitally transferring the letter of credit, digitally enabling the electronic bill of lading, and moving assets from one continent to another. We have also been working with a company called TradeCloud, which is focused on commodities, right? So they've actually built a metals, agri, and energy commodities platform, which is the likes of Toyota and a few others like Anglo American, which is close to the mining industry. They are using today. Uh, we have also looked at a platform called Tradewind Origin. Tradewind Origin uses blockchain and R3 Corda to trade around $7.4 million of gold. So they provide that end-to-end supply chain traceability, which links information about where the gold was procured from, how did it transfer from one party to another from an ownership perspective, and provide that end-to-end provenance. Uh, we have been working on a solution with Tradewind, which is basically digitizing the commodity on chain. So providing a digital asset backed by a regulated custodian on chain, wherein that whole process of minting the gold or minting that one token and moving that across the value chain can now be tracked seamlessly. Comchain is another one, again built on Corda. The use case here is about bulk commodity trade processing, eliminates the need of paper-based documentation, which is very archaic. And their solution offers a suite of features that are designed to reduce inefficiencies and times in bulk commodity trading, again built on R3 Corda. Marco Polo is one of the largest trade finance platforms today, connecting multiple organizations, enabling seamless trade from a payment commitments perspective or receivables finance perspective, built on R3 Code as of today. Uh, Contour is another example that I spoke about earlier, which Rio Tinto has used. And we have a very interesting use case with what was called as Offshore Operators Committee Consortia, now also called Blockchain for Energy. Completed a pilot for them for wastewater management at a Bacon Shale field in North Dakota in US, wherein a blockchain implementation was done to manage how the waste disposal at an oil well takes place, and how the fleet optimization around picking up the waste and disposing that waste off, and making sure that it's disposed sustainably, and providing it auditable, tamper-proof record back on blockchain as to how this waste was picked up, who picked it up, and where did they dispose it off. This is one of the key use cases that can be looked at. Uh, Before I stop, I want to make a special mention for Excedras, which is one of our key customers and partners who we work with. They have built a fantastic solution on R3 Corda blockchain, very specifically focused on the mining industry. I'll hand over to my friend Tim from Excedras to walk you through the solution and give you a demonstration of a real world solution in the mining space. Thank you so much.